all of you have been invited at the instance of PUCL Maharashtra, which is hosting this meeting. I'm supposed to converse with Manoj, so we are turning to each other. As a matter of fact, I finished the conversation with him before the thing started, because we had not met, although this book carries my blurb, but we had not met, and I asked him when the second part of it is coming. He has got a lot of material. It's a fascinating book, and I'm really awaiting for the second volume. He's got a lot of material, and he's probably writing the second part of it, right? I have certain things to just tell him. Maybe he has answers to that, because he has put in a lot of effort to understand the caste processes. It's beyond book, okay? Let me firstly say it truly a path-breaking and spectacular work, and congratulations for that. Path-breaking in sense, the way caste is generally written on or written about is a very stereotype, So one day, recently, I was asked to speak on caste, and the person who organized it expected me to start from how the castes are originated and all that. And this is the way, but typically that runs, as if you actually get the roots of the caste, then you are going to boil them and probably eat. I don't understand what the use of it, because it started somewhere in a very obscure antiquity, and what is the use of actually tracing it to the origins of caste? Had it been that caste had remained unchanged all through this period, and that makes sense, because if we get the roots of it and you strike at the roots of it, probably you can root it out. This is a very simple logic. But it has not been so. Castes have been evolving all through. Castes have been changing, And as I typically say in my mathematical way, that caste in course of time actually acquired a self-organizing, self-regulating characteristics, what we call as cybernetic system. I did my doctoral work on cybernetics when it was hot, and now people have forgotten, because cybernetics is gone in everything. That whatever you call an advanced technologies, there actually it has entered, and it lost its own identity. So that's why cybernetics is not known, but it's something like a system science, and that I worked on. And I found in a social systemic terms, I found very weird kind of parallel in a caste system. It just self-organizes. The kind of environment it gets, it actually adjusts itself, and it keeps operating. People thought, like Marx for that matter, thought when railways were being built in India, that time he thought that once the railways come, I was talking about Marx, but anybody for that matter, that when industrialization happens, because the railways came and the industrialization would happen in India, and because of that this kind of system that exists, and Marx called it the biggest obstacle in India's progress, okay? And I termed that Marx was the first man who actually problematized caste. I did not get a reference that anybody before that has problematized caste. So let me, because there is a lot of thing goes around Marx, Marx has become an enemy of the anti-caste people, so it might be a field for thought. So this was what was expected, but it did not happen. Technologies came, now people travel in local trains, etc., and you do not know who is what. People rub against each other, to get into the local train. Caste adjusted. We cannot say even a bit that caste has really come down. As a matter of fact, over the years, and particularly whatever that has happened during post-colonial times, when we celebratedly abolished untouchability, etc., and there is a common felt notion in people's mind that the caste also have been outlawed. The caste has been outlawed in the constitution, etc. So that kind of notion people carry, but despite that, my observation is that today India is more casteized than ever before. It was never like this in the history. Because caste was a way of life, or what Supreme Court in some context said. It was something like that, that people got accustomed to particular way of living, and it was just a fossilized village society, so they behaved that way. What I was talking about is that caste actually adjusted, and I made a provocative statement that India is more casteized today than ever before. And that perhaps is the truth. Because castes earlier were not like this. The castes were the way of life people lived. They did not have any sense. The people are not to be touched, that's all. The people who were not touched also knew that we are not meant to be touched. So this way it was an internalized kind of cultural way the caste remained. But now it is not. It is very, very what would you call it? Very vicious way caste operates today. So I would come to this thing. The Manoj has written very elaborately, and there is nothing much to talk because I just praised it. The way he has written this, the way he has tackled this subject, I really admire him. It has actually yielded already a lot of lessons. That is a very broad lesson that Caste Pride also suggests. The title itself suggests that how this entire legislative and judicial processes have been prejudiced against the social reform per se. I would not call the entire book is not per se against caste, but social reform, and social reforms is actually boiled down to caste in India. So that way he has dealt with this thing, and already there are lots of lessons. One of the things that I find is that the way when there were no movements around, there were no demands from people, and still the reforms were carried out by the British colonizers, whose objective was not to carry reforms at all. When they had not yet assumed the governing role, even that time the sati-like system was abolished by William Bentinck. Okay, so entire establishment was against. They were fearful that such kind of thing we should not be touching. This stands to again a logic, because Britishers have come here to loot. There is nothing. It's period. So that was open. It was sort of openly said. They came here for trading, etc., which was the loot, and then actually they started capturing areas and established their bases, etc. That they were meant for their purpose. The logic was the colonial exploitation. If they built the railways, it was primarily for themselves. If they built the ports, built roads, etc., everything was for them. But the unintended kind of benefit it yielded to the lower caste and the society per se were also immense. That people take two sides, that you condemn the Britishers, etc. Condemn we must for the 200 odd years colonial loot that they did of India and build their cities. But we have to keep in mind these aspects also. I cannot imagine if Britishers had not come here, what would be the shape of this country probably? What would be the shape of the society? It is very difficult to imagine. People like, many of you must have heard about Suniti Kumar Ghosh. Okay? You heard, right? Yes. So I had an opportunity to sort of discuss with him when I was in Calcutta. about, because he writes that already India was getting sort of capitalist processes wherein often and India would have, without even British, gone capitalist, etc., etc. Okay, that says all, because he was putting an entire blame on the colonial rule. And I disputed. So anyway, I'm not going into that kind of discussions, because he has written wonderful books, very data-rich books, and in support of his own argument. And many people would agree with me that they are wonderful books, no problem. But this is the one-sided of view. The other side remains that they have contributed to the social reforms also, although unintendedly. They did not have any intention to do that good. Now, the other lessons, and probably Manoj is unaware of that I draw from the book is, there are a lot of contributors. Again, we forget that these kinds of processes have many contributors, and we forget only name that comes up are only few. You know, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is anyway prominent name and cannot be forgotten. But there are a whole host of things that happened before that, which actually built on this process. This is an evolutionary process which actually reached us here. And that need not be forgotten. Now, for instance, there is one gentleman called Manekji Dadabhai, and Manoj rightly pointed out the error even in the government books that Dadabhai is confused with Dadabhai Nauroji. Okay, so this is the kind of extent of forgetting the history. So, and there are many people, like Ganesh Akkaji Gavai or MC Raja or so many, there are a whole host of people like Ayyang Kali for that matter. So these people, they have been forgotten and are brought alive in this book. This is very good. Particularly talking about Britishers, like I refer to William Bentinck's. A little bit background, 1933, the Charter Act came, right? Before Charter Act, East India Company was a business house. It was a business company. It did not have anything to do with the society or governance. And that time, this gentleman had brought in sati, abolition of sati, in 1929, 4 years before. And his predecessors, Hastings and Amherst, like who were governor generals those days, no? So those people were quite fearful, because if you tinker with the social system, etc., they had a natural fear. It is a strange land, and in that thing, although the Western liberal ethos impelled them to deal with this kind of injustices, but they could not do. They were fearful that there would be repercussions and unnecessarily kind of cost. East India Company was concerned with only cost. Unnecessarily there would be cost on this account. So they kept aloof for quite some time. They did not do anything. And this gentleman came and abolished sati. And although sati system went on, but it had diminished drastically. Sati actually have continued. In 1987, Rajiv Gandhi had to enact another sati law, sati abolition law, in the wake of Roop Kaur, that Rajasthani widow was burnt on her husband's pyre. So that time the law had to be brought, and that was supposed to be 41st sati, right, in independence area. This is a shameful thing. You cannot compare the kind of brutality or the savageness that this land had. So forget about direct Dalit oppression, etc., which was homomorphous with the life itself, but otherwise also such kind of things went on, And there are the kind of narrative that these people sell these days under the national civilization, all that kind of big talk, this needs to be seen in this light.